Yes, I am that crazy gardener and science teacher who literally stops and picks up acorns off the sidewalk. Let's see how many I can find. Since this tree is just out in the public, I don't know what variety it is, but it is an oak tree for sure, as you can tell from the leaves and acorns that are all around the ground here. So oak trees are amazing. They are something that we should be planting more of, especially in areas where there's not very much as much wildlife. We could do some restoration projects here. So, of all the different types of trees in the world, it's said that oak trees support the most wildlife. And that's because they actually attract and feed um, not almost 900 different kinds of caterpillars. And because of that, they're also home to many different types of birds. And the birds actually are foraging for the caterpillars. So there's a whole unique food web involved with oak trees, especially, different kinds of squirrels, and ground squirrels, and different animals. And when I saw some crushed acorns on the ground, I did see birds eating from that as well. Cars had basically driven over some of the oak tree seed, the acorns on the ground. And so not just the squirrels, but some bird life was actually getting to some of to the um the nuts as well. Now I did notice that some of these acorns were rotten, split, or otherwise not viable. So I was kind of picking out the ones that looked viable, and when I picked them up, if they were really light, I tossed them back down. I did grab a few of the small ones that had the little cap still on, just because I'm gonna have my students do an observation lesson with the materials, and by allowing them to see some of the other parts of the plant, that will help them in their identification process. They might also try to look at, okay, if it's an oak tree, there's many different species of oak, if they can try to narrow it down a little bit. Now, there are so many different species of oak trees that I don't even know which one this one is. It is used as an ornamental landscaping tree in a public parking lot. So I'm just collecting the seeds because they're free, and I'm trying to get enough for my entire class, which I have 150 students, and enough for my colleague who also has 150 students. So I was hoping to get 300 acorns like I did last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. Um, but it looks like there's been a little bit of picking around here. I don't know um, if like the maintenance has gotten better at cleaning up the area, which I don't think is the case because there's leaves all over the parking lot. Um, so I don't think it was a good cleanup job. I thought maybe there's at least one other gardener I know in the town that collects different seeds and seedlings, and then he sells them. And so maybe he beat me here. Um, Also, of course, squirrels are eating here as well, but that's the case every year. So I'm not quite sure why there are so few. Um, I made it here in the right time of year, right when the leaves are falling and so forth. So I don't know why there are so few compared to previous years. In previous years, I've had bags. Like I had more than enough for all of my students. So I'm not quite understanding why there's such a lack of the nuts. Some of them I'm not quite sure about, but because there's not that many, I am grabbing some that are kind of iffy. I did notice here there's a little seedling, which is surprising that there aren't more. Now, landscapers often will come through with weed whackers and just weed whack anything. They just kind of assume that that's a weed, but that is a little oak tree. So I could have been more gentle when I picked it out, but I'm going to plant it because I just know that someone's going to come through with a weed whacker, and that little guy is not going to make it unless he gets a new home. So he is coming home with me, and I'm going to put him in a little pot later. So, um, Yeah, so in nature, you'd have a lot of little oak trees popping up all over the place. I remember once when I used to babysit at a lady's house, she had all these little trees in her backyard. And I don't know what kind they were, but she actually was just pulling them off and throwing them in the trash can. And I said, "Can I just take them home with me?" She laughed at me and said, "Okay." But um, I just feel the strong need to plant trees. In many ways, I feel like it's a legacy that we have to leave behind more life than when we came into this planet. So whenever I have a chance to plant trees, I go for it. So it's like even if I eat an apple, I'm always saving the seeds and planting them into a pot or something, because I just can't bear to let a tree die. So here I am, just getting as many as I possibly can. There were a lot of those caps, which is, normal. I think there might have been a root on one of those acorns that I pulled, which is fine. I can get those into a pot. The ones I'm going to be bringing to my classroom are going to be the ones that are intact because we'll rinse them off, let them dry just a little bit so that they can. Actually, we'll just kind of like brush them off, and then the kids will get
I
sandpaper.
want to find at least one for each student. So it's not as plentiful as it was last year, so I'm a little concerned. I might be a little shy on this. So my students might have to choose what kind of tree they want to plant. I want them to be able to plant one of everything. So I'm going to keep looking around. I'm driving from one part of the parking lot to another part, and we'll see if I can find enough for every student. I have 150, and there's two sides of our group, so that's 300 kids. See, I'm trying to see if I can find 300 acorns.
Yeah, so I went ahead and moved the car to another part in the parking lot and started shuffling through these leaves in this area to see if I could find some more. I don't think I'm going to get 300 acorns here. It's really disappointing. But I am getting a lot. I mean, a dozen trees is, better than no trees. But I'm trying to get as many as I possibly can. And if I have to kind of mix anyways, I could mix up what types of trees that they're gonna get. So some might be able to plant, a maple tree, or some might be able to plant an oak tree or a cedar tree or um, something else. So I wanted to kind of have every variety for them I could possibly get my hands on. I just think how amazing that would be. I often have students come back and tell me that their oak trees are still alive. Actually, I saw an eighth grader last week who said her oak tree is still alive and her aunt is helping her to take care of it. So I thought that was super sweet. And I also had another student who told me that her mom yanked out her front lawn and planted a garden with the seeds that she won from my classroom raffles. So that was really, really cool and exciting. I've even had a student come back many years later and show me pictures of her with her sunchokes where they're like towering over her head. And so I just love to hear those stories. I've even had parents tell me that their Zabrina plants that their kids brought home for Mother's Day are still growing well and taking over like crazy. So it really is to me like a legacy that the plant material that I pass on to my children or my students or to my community, that is something that's long lasting and that can be something that they continue as well, and that they could spread that life to further reaches of our community. So I just really love to try to find these plant materials, especially when it's for free. Hello. I don't think anyone would ever care if I was picking these up in the parking lot because it's actually cleaning up a little bit of the mess, what they would perceive as being a mess. Um, but I'm always really surprised that this is left on the ground because it does break down and become very slick, which could be a hazard, liability wise. Someone could slip on the leaf the leaves when they get really slippery. Right now they're that really satisfying crunchy. You touch them, it just feels like autumn, right? Totally beautiful. So I'm counting here how many I have at like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. That one was cracked. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37. Well, that one was too small. 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. That one's bad. 47, 48, 49. Let's see, 53, 54 maybe. 55, 56, 57, getting close to the bottom. 58, 59, 60, 62, 64, 67, 69, 71, 72. One of them was too small. 74. I think a couple of them were a little bit light, so I'm not going to count all of them. I'm going to kind of round down. I think I've got 70 viable acorn seeds or oak tree seeds out of this lot.
So why would I want to grow oak trees? Well, I think it's great for students to grow trees. It's great for wildlife. Oak trees are some of the most nature rich trees there are. They live for hundreds of years. They provide food for wildlife, nesting sites for wildlife, and so much more. So, and then of course the leaves you can use for composting and making that wonderful rich leaf mold and compost. So lots of reasons to grow oak trees, for the squirrels, for the birds, for just for nature, and for the enjoyment. You can also, if you're desperate for food, there's a soaking and pouring method you can use with acorn to remove the tannins, which are toxic for us. So Native Americans used to soak them in rivers and the constant flowing stream, if they put it in a cloth or a bag or something, and then the constant flowing water would remove and leach out those tannins. And I believe it was a couple week process at least. So don't go around eating a bunch of the acorns. I don't want you to die. But there's a process to remove the tannins if times are very lean. Otherwise, I leave them for the squirrels. So nature can, feed itself. And yeah, that's why I do it. And students get so excited about this. We scratch it up with sandpaper, soak them, and we wrap them in a damp paper towel, put them in Ziploc bags, label them, put them in the crisper drawer of the school science fridge for over 100 days. And then after spring break, we say, hey, did you forget about these? And a lot of them will be cracked open and starting to sprout. I will do an update later on when that happens. So hit subscribe so that you can see those updates of our sprouting oak trees 3 or 4 months from now. So I was going through the seeds I was able to pick up. Definitely not as much as in the previous years. Not quite sure what's going on. I usually am able to find a lot more. And I noticed this year there are a lot of the small ones which are not viable. I am bringing in some leaves. You might have wondered about, like, why am I putting leaves in the bag and little ones that are not viable? But that will help the students to identify what they have there. So I'm going to put it like on trays, and they're going to do an observation and see if they can identify what the organism is. And then we'll scarify them, soak them, and cold stratify them for 100 days before we plant them. And I counted by weight how it felt. and to the touch, I think I have about 70 viable seeds in there. So about half my students will be able to plant an oak tree, and then I'll probably have to give some cedar trees out from my backyard for the other half. So they'll have a choice of a cedar tree or an oak tree. So that'd be really cool for them to have for Arbor Day. And it's a long-term project, so I have to think in the fall to grab these while they're still out. I don't take everything because there are squirrels and other organisms that need something to eat, but I got 70 this time. Last time I had probably 500. So, you know, their times are lean in more ways than one. I hope the squirrels are okay. Anyway, God bless you, and I'll see you on the next video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Plant a tree, y'all. Bye-bye.